Oh, so sad looking. Me and my brown thumb killing my caladiums. No, not really. This is what they're supposed to look like this time of year. Hey, what's up, garden friends? Jeff here. Hope you're doing well. I'm great. We need to talk. Your caladiums. I've talked about storing these many times on the channel. Been growing them for years. They're one of my favorite, not annuals, but dig and store perennials, I guess is what we'll call them. And Proven Winners, not that long ago, made a post on their Instagram that it's just been bugging me, and we need to talk about it. This isn't an attack on Proven Winners, but they made a post saying basically just toss your caladiums at the end of the year, because unless you live in southern Florida like zone 10 or 11, there aren't enough growing days for them to store the carbohydrates or build up the carbohydrates properly in order to have a bulb that's going to store well and give a nice looking plant the following spring when you replant them. That's just simply not true. You don't have to throw them away. You can store your caladiums. Motive behind a post like that, I don't know. Is it to keep people buying the plants? Maybe, I don't know. I would like to think that it's just passing along information, making sure that the social media posts are getting made, you know, about things to do in the fall with your plants. Maybe it's frequently asked questions, so they're just like, well, we'll reach out to our grower who handles the tropicals and see what they say. A grower that's in zone 10 or 11 southern Florida, I believe, who I don't know how they would have much expertise on storing the bulbs other than that, well, they'll ship bulbs. So they have some experience there, and I'm sure that they have had their fair amount of people asking them questions, potentially complaining over the years about, hey, I bought these last year and this year they look like garbage, what gives? That's the only thing I can figure. I don't think there is any malintention behind that post, but it's a big audience that they have, and I just want to talk about it. So here's the deal. Caladiums, they store very easily. Typically, this time of year when the day lengths start to get shorter, by this time of year I mean for me, late October into November, they start to wilt down and just die back to the corm. And this varies from year to year on when they do that. We're having an extremely mild fall. Usually my caladiums start to look a little bit junky around late September to early October, and then by about now they're about ready to be dug up and stored. They will have died down all the way. So if the issue is that they can't store up enough carbohydrates to make it through a long storage period, then, well, let's just talk about some ways around that. For one, I typically start my caladiums earlier in the season, so around March, I'll start them. Not always. I usually have a batch that doesn't make it into the ground until May, something like that, but usually I will take my little corms that I've stored for the winter time and put them in a big tray, just one of the drainage trays that goes under a seed starting kit, and I spread them out nice and thin and just put a layer of soil on top of them, and that just gets them to sprout and get moving. So by doing that, if you live someplace where you do have a really long winter, it would be a really long storage period, then you're getting them going before they start to pull a lot of energy. They're not going to grow and take off all that quickly in the house. They'll just sort of sit still for a few weeks, and then once they have their leaves up, maybe 2 or 3 of them, then you can go ahead and divide them up and actually put them into containers if you want to. But for a lot of us, I would say by mid-May you can go ahead and get them in the ground, and they won't have grown that much, but they will have had a start, and that helps prevent too much desiccation, or hopefully any desiccation. Build up nice strong bulbs. Organically rich media, soil, dirt, whatever you're growing them in, that does the trick. Cotton burr compost, manure, alfalfa meal, bone meal, great things for building nice strong corms and bulbs and plants. So you want to make sure that you're building up a nice strong plant every single year. That's going to make a huge difference also. And as far as digging and storing them goes, that's something I've talked about a lot on this channel. I'll link videos down below where I have talked about that, but typically I let them die back naturally because I'm fortunate to live someplace where usually they do that before we have frost. Not everybody has that option, right? So if you live someplace where you are going to have frost before they'll die back naturally, then go ahead and just lift them, take them inside, and they'll start to die back on their own. Clean all the dirt and everything off of the corm, set them out to dry for several days in a shady spot, and then you can store them in a dry peat, perlite, anything of the sorts. Put them someplace cool, dark, and dry for anywhere from like 5 to 6 months just to be safe, but I've stored them for much longer than that and have not had issues before. Main thing is that after about 4 months, you need to go in and check on them. And if they're looking like they're getting crinkly, then go ahead and put them in a tray and do what I was talking about, get them going so that they can start to build up and you'll have a nice, strong, healthy plant for the following year. These are things that we're supposed to be doing with any corm or bulb or rhizome tuber that's being stored anyways. Need to check on them every so often and make sure they're doing okay. And if they're starting to desiccate, then you either need to add a little bit of moisture, which I think can be risky, or just go ahead and pot them up and get them started. Keep an eye on rot and those things. Be prepared with cinnamon powder. Cinnamon powder works really well if you're starting to have some issues with mold. Peroxide sprays, even neem, if that's all you have around. I prefer a copper-based fungicide if you're starting to see mold and rot. You want to cut it off, clean them up, peroxide, fungicide, those sorts of things. Dry them off again, put them back into storage unless they're desiccated, in which case, like I said, just go ahead and plant them up. Just have to do it in a pot, but they're caladiums. They're not going to do much inside anyways. They won't be that much maintenance. It's really, you can just pot them up, give them a gentle water, not too much, and just set them in a windowsill and basically ignore them, right? Give them some water every now and then, probably every 10 to 14 days, depending on your climate, your humidity, and airflow and the type of soil that you're using. But typically, there's not much going on there, and without the heat, they're not really triggered to get going. So it's mostly just about keeping them ticking along until you have the appropriate conditions to get them moving and growing very quickly, right? Longer day lengths and warmth. That's what I'm talking about. This container right here, this is full of what were all the teeny tiny little bulblets that came in a pack of assorted Caladium bulbs that I got last winter. I'm talking like just like itty bitty, tiny little things. And this is what I got from them this year. There wasn't much to them. I didn't do much to baby them or grow them out either. I just threw them in this pot because I wanted to see the color variety of what they were going to look like and decide which ones that I would want to keep, because I don't always like all the colors that come in the assortments. But you can see they did, I guess you would have been able to see it better when they were up and looking better, but they were just teeny tiny little things. Now they're nice and big. And I believe that a lot of these will probably store just fine, but if they are exceptionally small, then that does mean we'll probably have to start them sooner than the others that are larger and could probably wait until the ground's warmed up and I can just move them outside. Let's talk about some of the caladiums that I have been growing for many years that I don't even do anything with because they're potted up under my larger tropicals, which aren't here anymore. I have really big palm trees that go off to storage in the wintertime, and several of them are underplanted with caladiums. And this greenhouse that they get sent to is full of very large plants. So everything that the pots are potted up with down below, they don't guarantee those plants. They just die back and don't really do anything to take care of those. It's about keeping the main big plants alive. It's a lot of palm trees and bird of paradise, and they have some big plumeria trees, those sorts of things in the greenhouse. The caladiums that I have underplanted my palms with come back every single year when the palm trees get delivered mid to late May. This year I think it was June when they got delivered. There was nothing in those containers when they delivered them. They took them away mid-October, I think like October 15th. They took the palm trees away in 2023. Then they were delivered June, early June of 2024, and it was mostly just soil in the bottom of those containers. But after a couple of weeks of watering, lo and behold, what pops up? The caladiums, Spring Fling, Florida Beauty. Those are my main ones that I really like to keep in those containers, and they come back bigger and healthier every single year. And that is a very long storage period for those caladiums. October 15th to June, that's a long time. Yet they still come back really big and beautiful. Bigger and more beautiful every single year. Those aren't even stored any kind of special way. That's another thing. If you just have your caladiums in a container, you can just let them naturally die back, cut them back. I would give the soil a flush with an antifungal, right? Copper-based fungicide or a peroxide solution. Let that dry out really well, and you can just take the whole thing and stick it someplace cool, dark, and dry, usually. If it's a really deep container and the soil's really moisture retentive, I don't know if I would do that, but it's another option. The whole point here is there are lots and lots and lots of options for storing your caladiums, various methods to do it. There are some variables and some nuances to keep in mind, like how long of a dormancy you're going to have with them. Do you feel like starting them indoors if you're someplace where you have frost all the way through the month of May, right? So maybe you dig them up in September and then you're not going to be able to get them back in the ground until late May into June. Maybe you're in like Wyoming or something like that. then maybe the juice isn't going to be worth the squeeze for you. I can understand that. To each their own, but the blanket statement of you simply won't be happy with your plants the following year if you store them, it was just bugging me. I don't like that. I think that it's a bit too strong of a statement to make when there are lots and lots and lots of ways to store caladiums. People who live outside of their perennial zone have been doing it for decades, and it hasn't been much of a problem for most people. The main issues you may come into are things like rot and desiccation, which I already talked about, but that's something you may have to deal with any type of corm, bulb, tuber, rhizome that you're storing, right? I feel that some of these caladiums that are being sold are just too expensive. Some of them, you know, it's like 20 bucks for a 6-inch container for ones that are already started, to just be like, just toss them and get new ones every year. I don't know. I think that it's worth giving them a try as far as storing them dormant. But again, the juice has to be worth the squeeze. To each their own. For me and my 6B, 7A garden, I've never had issues overwintering them. And I've never had the issue of having really tiny plants the following year because their dormancy was too long and they hadn't stored enough energy to get going. That's just, I don't know. I don't think that that's really a thing unless you have a very short growing season and a very long dormant season. Otherwise, I don't think you need to worry about that. Okay, that's better. Need to get that off my chest. It was just bothering me, the idea of people seeing this post from a very reputable grower thinking, oh, well, they say there's no hope, so I should just throw them away. That's not the case. You can give it a try. Like I said, it's really all about how you grow them the year before you put them into dormancy. Make sure everything's organically rich. The bone meal makes a big difference. Overall, just try and make sure you have nice, big, healthy plants. And if you have a long dormancy, then go ahead and start them inside. And if that's not your jam, that's fine. Then you just buy new ones. But by doing that, you will get bigger and bigger plants every single year. And that's fun. That's one of the reasons we even bother storing them, right? Is one, to save money, and two, so that we have nice, bigger, more full plants the next year from the bigger corms. I have a little bit more information on this. I'm not going to dive into all of that. This was all brought to my attention by Growing South on Instagram. Sean, if you're watching, thank you. Go ahead and give him a follow. He actually did email them and had a conversation, you could say, and relayed that to me, and it was just bugging me. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it, but I'm not going to post like their responses and anything like that, because I feel like that's just stirring things up, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. I think that it is just a little bit of unintentional misinformation. Let's just go with that. I'm not trying to step on any toes or start any drama here. I hate the idea of y'all throwing these away if you don't have to. And the comment section, that's the great thing about the internet. Comment down below. What have been your experiences overwintering your caladiums? Have you noticed that it's just not worth the effort, that you won't be happy with your plants the next year? I doubt it, but I'm sure that that does happen sometimes, and it all just goes back to all the different variables that I talked about. Variables that exist with any bulb, corm, tuber, rhizome that you're storing. Same ones are factors you have to keep in mind with the caladiums too. Okay, that's all. I'm done rambling and ranting on this. Hopefully it didn't even come across as a rant. I just want to make sure there's some information out there that was a little bit more what's the word, helpful than just saying don't bother, or that you will likely be disappointed, because I don't think that you will likely be disappointed, not from my experience. I think that it's worth trying. Okay, hope everybody's doing well, having a great day, a great life, and everything's just going absolutely beautifully for you. And of course, as always, and most importantly, everybody, keep on growing. Bye.